This is my audience three, my mom, dad, my dog Marley. Have you ever woken up frightened from a horrific dream you had, sweating and trembling with fear? Well, this could be a sign of PTSD. PTSD, or post traumatic stress disorder, is a mental disorder that occurs when a person is involved in a scary, shocking, or dangerous event. There are many different events that can cause this, such as war, sexual abuse, etc. I'll be given the different types of psychology studied with PTSD, different events that cause PTSD, and different ways people can cope with the thoughts caused by PTSD. The first thing I'll be talking about is all of the amount of people that suffer from PTSD. In a single human lifetime, 7.5% of people suffer from stages of PTSD at some point in their life. There's many reasons that can cause this. Most reasons are actually fairly simple. Most of them come across some sort of tragedy in their lives. Some will have flashbacks of these events, which is a key symptom of PTSD. In one year, an average of 5 million people suffer of PTSD alone in the United States. This may mean something about the economy we live in. This would mean too many horrifying events caused by the government. No one really knows what we could do to stop this, but we could take minor steps in achieving this. The next thing I will be talking about is suicide rate. A huge question we have: how many suicides per year are caused by thoughts of a traumatic experience? In 2012 alone, there were 5,000 suicides. Here's some data I picked up from a website. Based on the most recent data available, in fiscal year 2009, the suicide rate among male veteran VA users was 38.3 per 100,000 compared to 12.8 per 100,000 in females. These are all thought to be caused by PTSD. As you'd guess, this number is only rising. Back to the economy. If we could figure something out to help people suffering, we could only hope to see this number decline. There's many therapists and ways to cope with it. Anyone that is diagnosed with PTSD is at a substantially higher risk of suicide than anyone else. Doctors in the neurology department are continuing to advance in treatment for PTSD. The only problem with this, there will always be some sort of trauma we experience. Another question we have is, what percentage of men and women experience trauma? According to 50% of men and 60% of women will experience some sort of trauma in their lives. The number of people struggling with PTSD is 18 men to 13 women. Here's some more data I picked up. For their study, Inschlicht and her team recruited 18 men and 13 women who had been diagnosed with PTSD. These participants were all shown various images on a computer screen. Electrodes were attached to their palms so researchers could measure participants' physiological response to each image. Not quite sure why the percentage is at a 10% difference, but some people come to believe it has to do with sexuality. A woman is known to be weaker than a man, which could lead to sexual assault, a very good cause to PTSD. My next topic to discuss is some of the reasons people suffer PTSD. An estimated 1 in 5 veterans returning from combat will suffer from PTSD. Almost 31% of Vietnam veterans are diagnosed severely with this. Here's some more knowledge, or more data that I got. As many as 10% of Gulf War, which is Desert Storm veterans, 11% of veterans of the war in Afghanistan, and 20% of Iraqi war veterans. Now, I'm typing this for being very thankful of all the veterans and stuff. But why put yourself at risk? There's many other things to do with your life than continuously put yourself in trauma. Another big portion is mental health professionals. 50% of outpatient health professionals suffer PTSD. Now, I'm sure they have witnessed some terrible things. There's many people that are admitted into these facilities that have very messed up brains. Bipolar disorder is an illness that takes a toll on these professionals. The things they see are very difficult to deal with at times. The ethnicity rate of PTSD is astounding. The races have a higher rate of developing are African American, Native American, and Hispanic. From this information, those must be the highest trauma causing races. Between 13 and 45% of children experiencing trauma in their childhood. Some more data I picked up. Studies show that about 15 to 43% of girls and 14 to 43% of boys go through at least one traumatic event. Of these children and teens who have had trauma, 3 to 15% of girls and 1 to 6% of boys develop PTSD. Rates of PTSD are higher for certain types of trauma survivors. The easiest way to prevent this would be to remove them from a habitat like this. There is no need for them to witness things like that. A lot of them come from sexual assault experiences from messed up adults. The last cause I will discuss is rape and sexual assault. Most people that have encountered or been in a rape or sexual assault event will develop some sort of PTSD. This is one of the most terrifying experiences, right beside war and vehicle accidents. Now, I've had minor stages of PTSD due to a horrific car accident I was involved in. Symptoms I've had included dreams and flashbacks. It surely is not a fun deal, I'll tell you that. Now, another thing is what types of psychology are involved while studying PTSD? Well, there are many different types. Another question we may have is what are the types of psychotherapy to help cope with PTSD? The first activity I'll be discussing is prolonged exposure. Prolonged exposure teaches you how to gain control by facing your negative feelings. When you are finished with your prolonged exposure workshop, there's a ton of things you should be able to do. I'll just give you a few of the basics. The first thing a patient could expect is a therapist getting to know more about you. The patient will then begin to learn about new breathing techniques that can help calm you down during an anxiety attack. At about the second session, you will then work with your provider and discuss many things. A few of the basic things you will discuss are lists of people, places, or activities you prefer to stay away from since the trauma. Another type of therapy to attend is cognitive processing therapy. What can you expect during cognitive thinking therapy? Well, first off, the provider will be giving you an overview of the treatments you'll be receiving. Then you'll be going over the basic problems involved with PTSD to help understanding symptoms better. You will then be asked the kind of trauma you witnessed, but will not get into great detail about it. The patient will have to do some writing about the trauma experienced. Over several of your future sessions, negative or helpful thoughts that the trauma has caused. During the session and even at home, there will be worksheets to help learn the strategy difficulties. Difficulties may occur while writing about problems, but this could help cope with the anger and other emotions. The last type of therapy I'll be discussing is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. EMDR doesn't really focus on typical talk therapy. It actually kind of surprises people with what it is. It works with rapid eye movements of the patient. A typical session of EMDR can last up to 90 minutes. During the session, the therapist will move his or her fingers in front of the patient's face. While you see focus on the finger movements, the person will have to recite his traumatic experience. This includes emotions and the body sensations that go along with it. Now, in conclusion, PTSD is a trauma that may lead to depression. A question we may have is, are there any medications available? The answer is yes. There are many types of medications, but I will only be giving you a few of them. First medication I'll describe are sertralines. Now, this medication is used for many different kinds of disorders. A few main disorders are OCD, depression, and PTSD. An example of sertraline is Zoloft. Zoloft is a kind of knockoff brand, but does the same as a generic. Another type of medication is fluoxetine. There's a few different disorders that this may help with. A couple of them are OCD, bulimia nervosa, panic disorders, and of course PTSD. Now, PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental disorder that occurs when someone is involved in a scary, shocking, or dangerous event. There are many different situations that can cause this, such as war, sexual abuse, etc. I gave you the different types of psychology studied with PTSD, different events that cause PTSD, and different ways someone can cope with the thoughts that are common with PTSD. In conclusion, PTSD is a very serious mental illness. We are still making discoveries along the way to help. And my audience got out of the background here. My dog stayed right there. And I got my mom and my dad still.